you want to start in terms of what your thoughts were on Saturday?
Do we want to go? Let's just do it like this. Do we want to go positive with things the defense actually went out there and improved, or do you want to go, negative? Because
we could do the positive sandwich thing.
Same thing. Okay.
Where you start with a positive. It's like I think it's like a manager or something. You're supposed to do this to your employees. You like bring them in for a meeting. You start with a positive, then you rip their ass. Then you end with a positive. So it's like your hair looks great today. You're horrible at your job. You need to start showing up at work on time. When people interact with you, they're incredibly uncomfortable, and your suit looks nice. And see that employee leaves feeling very empowered, very good about themselves. So if you were getting to start with a positive, what would it be?
The positive would be that I thought the defense fixed their communication issues that they had against UCLA. Because if you just go back and you watch the tape and you think you know what the coverage was without really doing a deep dive into it, you can say, man, God, the defense just looks like they're all on just 11 different pages. When in fact, a lot of time against UCLA, it was 10 guys on the same page. One guy did not get the communication. And as you know, defensive football, if you've got 10 guys doing one thing and the other guy doing one, it's going to mess up the entire thing.
Yeah.
And we talked about that on the pregame show with Scone and Jeremy. But they fixed a lot of those issues, right? You saw guys talking with each other. You saw guys, using the hand signals like they're supposed to if they're going and changing the coverage. So that part of it was good because it's really been a problem for LSU for 2 years now. They got some of those issues fixed. The defensive front, last week against UCLA, they played 2 really good quarters of football, 2 bad quarters of football. This time they played, obviously, 4 quarters of football. So that's 6 out of the 8 quarters. They've been really, really good. You get 8 sacks. I know it's McNeese. I get that. But you get 8 sacks in this contest. That was good to see. Mason Smith showed out. Andre Anthony showed out. You saw Guillory get in there. We hadn't really seen him.
Guillory had a sack.
It was good. It was good to see him get in there and gain some confidence because he was a big-time recruit that we haven't seen a lot of. So that was good. Mike Jones got in the game and had a couple of tackles. So that was good to see him get in the game plan because we've been kind of waiting and seeing what his role was going to be. So all of that for me defensively was positive. I thought you did a really nice job in every aspect of the defense. McNeese really never got anything going. If they don't have the screen pass against the backups there at the end, you hold them like you're supposed to, then less than 100 yards total offense.
Yeah, so and now the last thing you hit on there, now that's the thing. People aren't going to get too excited about this because it's what you think an FBS team, a good FBS team should do against an FCS team, but the defense is still impressive nonetheless. I mean, it was almost under 100 total yards for the majority of the game. And as you said, Mason Smith is an absolute monster in the middle, as was Jaquelin Roy. And Andre Anthony looked like a man amongst boys. I mean, sack in the second half where he splits the double team and then just rips the quarterback down. And look, they were clearly bigger and stronger than that McNeese team. And so really, quite frankly, Jake, on the other side of this coach's review, on the other side of this film review, like, there's not a lot to say about the defense because they just dominated. They did exactly what they needed to do. They completely dominated the game, completely dominated the line of scrimmage. The offense then becomes a much more interesting thing to talk about because they did not. And the same way that the defense, not just in play, but physically looked, just on a different level than the guys that were going against McNeese. Most disappointingly, LSU on offense did not. Like, they did not in their play, but when you look at that LSU offensive line, and this is something that we're going to break down a lot today, it just doesn't look even like a premier SEC offensive line. And I mean just in body, kind of.
Yeah, just eye test.
Just an eye test, yeah. They do not pass the eye test. But sometimes you cannot pass the eye test, and you can still be beasts. Not the case with this LSU offense. So look, they definitely came out wanting to run the ball. And to be fair, you saw a more diverse set of runs, right? You had the second run of the night. They were under center, and you ran horn boss.
You did.
It was Godwin with a stiff arm and a 20-yard run before he came up limping. You ran a toss sweep to Keishon Butte at one point. The big TDP 20-yard run was a trap play. Trey Palmer had a toss sweep. You had a fake horn boss end around to Trey Palmer that was pretty interesting. So you got the more diverse rushing attack.
Even the Corey Kiner ones, it was more of an outside zone stretch look than it was a true inside zone right? You saw Nussmeier really hold it in there and stretch with him. He had the ability to pull it, but it stretched out way farther than just in between the tackles.
Where that gets disappointing is you still just weren't good enough. And you can't run the ball. You ran over 30 times against McNeese, and you couldn't even average 4 yards a carry. And the problem starts with, look, I don't think this line is terribly talented to begin with. They're not very strong at the point of attack. They don't look very athletic when they get to the second angle, or excuse me, when they get to the second level. Like, you put these linemen in space, it looks like they panic a bit. They get run around by linebackers all the time. Bad angles on the second level, bad technique. I mean, a lot of helmets on the wrong side of blocks, not a lot of cohesion on combo blocks. Doesn't seem like there's any understanding of assignment either. Yeah. In terms of who to block a lot of times. No one's hips stay square to the line.
Nobody's.
Like, I mean, it's like an open door policy. Come see my office whenever you want. I'm just going to swing the gate open. No, like, so what I mean by there is you got to stay parallel to the line a lot of times with your hips. You present a wide front, you put like a wall, right? You want to be like a wall. So what I mean in turning your hips is you're like a door. You're just allowing guys through, and it's crazy. It just creates gaps all over the field. Again, no pop at the point of attack. Guys on the ground all the time as well.
On the ground consistently.
Which is always a sign. Like, that was one of my big problems trying to make an NFL team. I was on the ground a little too much, right? And that's like a very unathletic sign, a very unathletic feeling. And this ground's on the line all the time. Now, to be fair, although you're not beating anybody, it feels very hard-pressed to think you'll beat anybody of note with if that O-line has to play again. It is not fully representative of who the offensive line is, given that you had 3 starters out, and you had the young guys in. The young guys had a ton of MAs. But it does speak to what we talked about going into the season, and even what we lamented last year, Jake, is that the next crop of offensive linemen just did not look very inspiring in the slightest. And you would hope that they get better in the offseason, and it hasn't really coalesced. And now you actually saw them in a game situation against a team that they should have been physically, very physically superior to, and they didn't look physically superior at all. I mean, you can't even you run back-to-back QB sneaks to gain a yard, and you couldn't do it.
Yeah. The thing that's troubling. The thing that's also troubling to me is you're having to put guys out of position because the guys that were recruited to be in those positions are not there yet.
Yeah.
That's why you have your backup center at tackle. That's why you have your backup guard at tackle. Like, we talked about, like, the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line last year. When I looked at it, it was a joke because you had the same thing. You had guards playing tackle. You had centers playing guard. You didn't have guys in their natural position. And because guys haven't developed into the players that you thought you were getting in recruiting, that's what you're having to do for LSU. Like, you would like to see Doomerville be your tackle and be out there, right? You'd like to see Cardell Thomas be able to get out there and be a guard. You'd like to see all of these things, but they have not developed into those players. And so that's why you end up with, Charles Turner having to play right tackle and Hill, who is a guard, having to play tackle, right? So that part of it. But also just within the game, like, too many times do you see a combination block between the center and the guard get held up on one defensive lineman and not get up to that linebacker.
Bro, there's no power.
You can't allow you can't allow the defensive lineman to grab your jersey and you not be able to get off that. To T-Bob's point, you got to have enough power if you're the center to rip off that, let the guard take that defensive lineman over, and you work up to your linebacker. And then if you're on the backside, if you're the backside tackle on a zone run, you can't fall on your face because your feet get caught up with another lineman.
I keep seeing that.
You have to end up on your linebacker or whoever is in your space.
Or like really ill-advised soft cut blocks on the backside. A lot of times I saw too that aren't doing anything.
They're not doing anything. And I'll be real honest with you. Like, I saw Jack Besh get into a defensive end better than some of the tackles.
Yeah.
Right? This is a man who is converted receiver to tight end. He's been a tight end for 6 minutes, and he's getting into the chest of defensive ends, and some of your linemen aren't. Like, that's a real problem. And it's hard for me to sit here and grade running back performance considering what's in front of them.
Yeah.
Like, it truly is.
Fair.
Like, there's some things they miss, yeah, without question. Like, maybe you can cut back and pick up 6 yards when you picked up 2. Okay, we can nitpick it a little bit. But there's just not a whole lot there. Now, it was good to see some diversity in the run game, get under center a couple times and do some things. Goodwin, when he got on the edge, that guy's got a different gear. Now, he gets hurt on the play and comes back, but, ended up back out of the game. So we'll see where he's at. Corey Kiner definitely gave you some juice on some of those outside zones that you were running. But still, when you go back and you watch the tape, if you're being brutally honest with yourself, it's not good enough and it's not close.
No, it's not close. And if you ever have to bring this offensive line in an SEC game, I just don't know how you win that SEC game. Like, unless the defense would somehow put together some performance that was just, like, over-the-top good, and you're almost getting, like, a 2011 style win where it's, like, I don't know, like 13-10 or something along those lines. And again, it's especially dark because this was a lot of the look into the future of the offensive line, and that looks very bare. Somebody asking, and NyQuil's still a lot asking in the chat, no power. Is that a strength conditioning problem? So you could say that. I think, and again, you know me, I'm so biased towards Moffitt that I'm not the best person to ask, but there are a couple of interesting things to think. First off, and Moscona pointed out in the Scona T podcast, Nick Saban's tried to hire Moffitt like multiple times in recent years, right? So if you think you trust Saban, like Saban knows, right? Also, all the other positions look big and strong, right? I mean, so to me, it would speak more to the bodies in that room versus a problem and how those bodies are.
And when you break it down, if you start going over to the recruiting sites and you start breaking down, and Cody Worsham and I were talking about this on Hey Fighting podcast. You start doing like some deep dives, some numbers into it, that's a position that Louisiana doesn't have a ton of. We've talked about that plenty of times, T, right? And you're having to go elsewhere, and you have gotten good players, but you're looking for the great players. You know what I'm saying? Like, you haven't had – I think the highest-rated offensive lineman on this team is Deculus, right? I think he's the highest-rated offensive lineman. And then your 2, 3, and 4, I believe, are guys that aren't in the starting rotation right now, right? So even when you've gotten a higher recruit, Boomerville, Cardale, Thomas, right, those guys aren't playing right now. So it's been a real problem in recruiting trying to get offensive linemen because you don't have a lot in your area for whatever reason. And that's why, like, if you have one, like Will Campbell up in Neville, like, you absolutely have to get those guys. It is what it is. Like, you're not getting that top tier offensive lineman. Yeah.
And when we get back, we'll continue to break down the LSU game. There's still more to get to in that vein, but yeah, it's not good. It's not good in the O-line right now. All right, when we get back, more off the bench. Keep it on.